Carl Jung predicted a time when the sensitive ones would stop being victims and start being leaders. That time is right now. The empath is undergoing a massive shift, and if you're watching this, you already feel it. This is not a breakdown. This is a breakthrough. And the people who used your kindness as a weapon are about to discover something that terrifies them. You're waking up to your shadow. You've spent your entire life absorbing everyone else's pain. You've carried their emotions like they were your own. You've made yourself smaller to make others feel bigger. And for years, people told you this was your weakness. But Carl Jung saw something completely different. He saw your sensitivity as a dormant superpower waiting to be unleashed. Here's what manipulative people don't want you to know. Every empath has a shadow side. Jung understood this better than anyone. He taught that the brightest light casts the darkest shadow. You've been so focused on being kind, on keeping the peace, on helping everyone around you, that you buried something powerful deep inside. You buried your capacity for ruthlessness, not cruelty, ruthlessness, the ability to see clearly, act decisively, and protect yourself fiercely without guilt or hesitation. And that terrifies the people who've been using you. Think about it. You've always known when someone was lying to you. You felt it in your gut. You saw it in their face. You noticed the inconsistencies, but you ignored your intuition because you didn't want to seem paranoid. You gave people the benefit of the doubt, even when every cell in your body was screaming that something was wrong. That ends now. Jung spent decades studying what he called the integration of the shadow, and he discovered something profound. The people who seem the kindest and most selfless often have the most powerful shadow waiting to be integrated. You've been suppressing your anger, your boundaries, your ability to say no without explanation. You've been taught that these things make you a bad person. But Jung knew the truth. These qualities don't make you bad. They make you complete. They make you whole. And when you finally embrace them, you transform into someone who can love deeply while protecting themselves absolutely. Let's talk about what usually triggers this massive shift. It's almost always a betrayal from someone you trusted completely. Maybe a partner who cheated. Maybe a family member who exploited your generosity. Maybe a friend who spread lies after you held their secrets. The details vary, but the pattern is always the same. Someone you protected used your kindness as a weapon. But here's what most people don't understand about that snap. It's not a breakdown. It's the sound of chains breaking. Your whole life, you've absorbed pain and blamed yourself. You've carried the weight of other people's dysfunction like it was your responsibility to fix them. And the person who betrayed you expects you to do the same thing again. That's not what happens this time. Instead, something shifts. You become unnaturally calm, your mind clears, and suddenly you see everything with perfect clarity. You see all the red flags you ignored. You see all the patterns you made excuses for. This is what Jung called differentiated perception. It's when the empath stops filtering reality through hope and starts seeing it exactly as it is. This is where the real transformation begins. This is the integration of your shadow. For years, you suppressed your anger because you thought it made you like the people who hurt you. But anger isn't the problem. Unconscious anger is the problem. Suppressed anger is the problem. When you finally allow yourself to feel your anger consciously, when you stop apologizing for it and start using it as fuel, you become something extraordinary. You become an empath with boundaries, an empath with standards, an empath who loves deeply but refuses to be destroyed by that love. Jung documented this process in his clinical work over decades. He watched patient after patient go through this exact transformation. And what he discovered was remarkable. The empaths who tried to skip this step, who tried to go straight to forgiveness without feeling their anger, never truly healed. They just recycled the same patterns with different people. They attracted the same type of toxic relationship over and over because they never integrated the part of themselves that knows how to say no. They never developed the internal warrior that protects the internal healer. But the empaths who allowed themselves to feel everything, who sat with their rage and their grief and their sense of betrayal, these were the ones who emerged transformed. They didn't become bitter. They became wise. They didn't become closed off. They became selective. They didn't lose their capacity for love. They just stopped giving it to people who couldn't appreciate its value. This is the difference between suppression and integration. Suppression creates bitterness. Integration creates wisdom. Jung understood that integration doesn't mean becoming cruel. It means becoming complete. The awakened empath doesn't lose their capacity for compassion. They just stop wasting it on people who see compassion as weakness. You learn to recognize the difference between someone who's genuinely struggling and someone who's professionally victimizing themselves. You learn to identify emotional vampires before they get close enough to drain you. Empaths aren't broken, they're alchemists in progress. The Alchemist's Path gives you drills, Jung-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity. By Surreal Mind, 236-page downloadable ebook in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com. You learn to trust that voice inside you that always knew the truth. And here's where it gets really interesting. When you integrate your shadow, when you stop suppressing your power, something happens that nobody prepared you for. The people around you change, not because you're doing anything to them, but because your energy has fundamentally shifted. Toxic people run away from you. They can't explain why. They just suddenly feel uncomfortable in your presence. They sense that their manipulation tactics won't work anymore. They feel exposed by your clarity. So they disappear from your life without you having to confront them or cut them off. They remove themselves. Jung called this phenomenon the law of psychological attraction. When you change your internal frequency, you automatically change what can exist in your field. It's not magic, it's basic psychology. Manipulators need someone who doubts themselves. Narcissists need someone who will absorb their projections. Energy vampires need someone who doesn't protect their boundaries. When you integrate your shadow, you stop being that person. And they instinctively know it. They feel it before you even say a word. This is why the awakened empath doesn't need to become confrontational or aggressive. You don't need to call people out or expose them publicly. You don't need to get revenge or make them pay for what they did. Your transformed presence does all the work for you. The people who can't handle your authenticity remove themselves. The situations that don't serve your growth naturally fall away. The relationships that were built on you being unconscious dissolve without effort. And you're left with space, beautiful, clean, open space to build something real. Meanwhile, healthy people feel safer around you. They're drawn to your authenticity. They respect your boundaries because you've finally learned to set them without guilt. You stop being an emotional sponge that absorbs everyone's problems and start being an emotional mirror that reflects people's true selves back at them. And that's a superpower most people will never develop. You can sit across from someone and within minutes know exactly who they are beneath their mask. Not because you're judging them, but because you're finally seeing clearly. This ability to mirror rather than absorb changes everything about relationships. Before, when someone dumped their emotions on you, you would take them in and carry them for days or weeks. But now, when someone brings their chaos to you, you simply reflect it back. You might say, "That sounds really difficult," and then you stop. You don't take it on. You acknowledge it and let them carry their own weight. This is what Jung meant when he talked about being in the world, but not of it. You can witness someone's pain without drowning in it. You can hold space for someone's journey without walking their path for them. This is mature empathy. This is what Jung meant when he talked about the integrated human. You're no longer at war with yourself. You're no longer splitting yourself into the part that people can see and the part you have to hide. You bring all of yourself into every interaction. Your light and your shadow, your compassion and your boundaries, your ability to love and your refusal to be destroyed by love. You become whole, and wholeness is power. Let's talk about what this looks like in practice. Your relationships transform completely. You stop explaining yourself to people who are determined to misunderstand you. You stop defending your boundaries to people who keep violating them. You stop trying to prove your worth to people who've already decided you're worthless. You just quietly remove yourself from situations that don't serve your growth. No drama, no long explanations, no attempts to make them see your perspective. You just leave. And that silence is more powerful than any words you could speak. There's something deeply unsettling to toxic people about an empath who simply walks away. They're used to you chasing, explaining, bending yourself to make the relationship work. When you stop doing that, when you just calmly exit, it breaks their entire playbook. They can't manipulate someone who's no longer invested in their opinion. This is one of the most powerful shifts you'll experience. Walking away is not giving up. Walking away is the ultimate act of self-love. It's saying, I value my peace more than I fear your reaction. That's freedom. You also stop absorbing blame that doesn't belong to you. When someone tries to make their problem your responsibility, you hand it back to them with perfect calm. When someone tries to guilt, trip you into doing something that violates your boundaries, you say no without justification. When someone tries to gaslight you about your own experience, you trust your perception over their manipulation. This is what it means to be immune to emotional manipulation. Not cold, not cruel, just clear. Crystal clear about what's yours and what's theirs. Learning to say no without justification is one of the hardest skills for empaths to develop. You've been conditioned to believe that every no needs a reason, but integration teaches you something revolutionary. No is a complete sentence. You don't owe anyone a reason for protecting yourself. Watch what happens when you start practicing this. The healthy people in your life will respect your no without demanding justification. They might be disappointed, but they'll accept it gracefully and move forward. The toxic people will lose their minds completely. They'll push back hard. They'll demand explanations. They'll try to make you feel guilty. They'll act like your boundary is a personal attack against them. And that reaction tells you everything you need to know about them. People who truly care about you will respect your boundaries without question. People who want to use you will be deeply offended by them. The awakened empath learns something that changes everything. You realize that you don't owe anyone access to you. Not your time, not your energy, not your emotional labor, not your body, not your resources. You don't owe anyone a relationship just because they want one. You don't owe anyone forgiveness just because they apologized. You don't owe anyone a second chance just because they promise they've changed. You get to choose who earns a place in your life. And that choice is based on people's consistent behavior, not their convenient words. This is where people start calling you cold. They say you've changed. They say you're not the person you used to be. And they're absolutely right. You're not that person anymore. You're not the person who sacrificed their own well-being to keep everyone else comfortable. You're not the person who stayed in toxic situations out of loyalty. You're not the person who believed potential over patterns. You evolved. And the people who benefited from your unconsciousness are threatened by your awakening. Here's what they don't tell you about that evolution and transformation. The people calling you cold are usually the ones who benefited most from you being warm and accessible. The people saying you've changed are usually the ones who relied on you staying exactly the same so they could keep using you conveniently. The people accusing you of being selfish are usually the ones who are angry you're no longer selfless on their behalf. When you hear these accusations, don't defend yourself. Just notice who's saying them. That will tell you everything. There's a specific type of person who becomes enraged when an empath wakes up. It's the person who built their entire relationship with you on your lack of boundaries. Maybe they're used to calling you at 3 in the morning with their drama and having you answer every time. Maybe they're used to borrowing money they never pay back. Maybe they're used to treating you poorly and having you forgive them without consequences. When you change the rules of engagement, when you start requiring them to treat you with basic respect, they don't see it as you finally valuing yourself. They see it as you betraying them, and their reaction shows you exactly why the boundary was necessary. But here's what Jung discovered that will change how you see this transformation. This isn't about revenge. This is about peace. The strongest version of the empath isn't the one who destroys everyone who hurt them. It's the one who realizes those people already destroyed themselves. You don't need to punish them. You just need to stop saving them from the consequences of their own behavior. You step back and let reality teach them what your compassion couldn't. This might be the hardest lesson for empaths to learn. You've spent so much of your life protecting people from themselves. You've made excuses for their behavior. You've shielded them from consequences. You've given them chance after chance after chance, always believing that your love would be enough to change them. But integration teaches you a brutal truth. You cannot love someone into healing. You cannot care someone into growth. You cannot sacrifice yourself enough to save someone who doesn't want to be saved. And here's the part that brings peace. When you finally step back and stop interfering with someone's journey, one of two things happens. Either they hit bottom hard enough to wake up and do the work, or they don't. But either way, it's not your responsibility anymore. You gave them everything you had. You showed them a better way. You modeled healthy behavior. And if they choose dysfunction anyway, that's their path to walk. Your job is not to save everyone. Your job is to save yourself and then help others who are ready to help themselves. The integrated empath understands something profound. Hurt people hurt people. The person who betrayed you is probably carrying wounds they've never healed. Understanding this doesn't mean you have to stay and be their victim. It just means you can leave without hatred. You can protect yourself without becoming what hurt you. This is the evolution Jung believed represented the future of human psychology. The empath who learns to integrate their shadow becomes what he called the individuated person, someone who can feel everything without being destroyed by what they feel. Someone who can see everything without becoming cynical. Someone who can love deeply without losing themselves in that love. And here's the beautiful part. Once you complete this transformation, you become a template for other empaths. Your presence alone shows them what's possible. They see that you survived, that you're not broken, that sensitivity plus boundaries equals power, and they start their own journey of integration. Jung spent his entire career studying transformation, and he concluded that the empath's journey is the most important one for humanity's evolution, because empaths feel the collective pain first. You sense when something is wrong in your family, your workplace, your community, your culture before anyone else admits it. You're like emotional seismographs detecting earthquakes before they reach the surface. And when you learn to trust that sensitivity instead of doubting it, when you learn to protect yourself while staying open, you become exactly what this world needs more of. Think about how often you knew something was wrong long before it became obvious to everyone else. Maybe you felt the tension in your family before the divorce was announced. Maybe you sensed the dysfunction in your workplace before the scandal broke. Maybe you felt the relationship was over months before your partner admitted it. You've been right about these things your entire life, but you learned to doubt your intuition because other people called you paranoid or negative or too sensitive. Integration means reclaiming that gift and trusting it absolutely. Jung believed that empaths serve as the early warning system for collective consciousness. You feel the cultural shifts before they become movements. You sense the social problems before they become crises. You detect the emotional undercurrents that everyone else is ignoring. And when you learn to speak about what you sense without apologizing for it, you serve an essential function. You give voice to truths that need to be heard. You shine light on shadows that need to be acknowledged. You become a catalyst for collective awakening, not by forcing anything, but simply by refusing to pretend you don't. See what you clearly see. Think about what you've survived. Think about all the times you carried other people's emotional weight. Think about all the times you stayed when you should have left. Think about all the times you blamed yourself for other people's choices. You survived all of that. And now you're on the other side realizing that your sensitivity was never your weakness. It was your strength waiting to be claimed. You just needed to stop letting other people define what strength looks like. The awakened empath becomes a force of nature, not because you're trying to be powerful, but because you finally stop trying to be small. You stopped dimming your light to make others comfortable. You stopped suppressing your truth to keep the peace. You stopped abandoning yourself to avoid abandonment. And in doing so, you discovered something Jung knew all along. The empath who learns to take up space, who learns to speak their truth, who learns to protect their energy, becomes the most powerful person in any room. This transformation isn't always comfortable. There are days when you'll question if you're being too harsh. Days when you'll wonder if you should give someone another chance. Days when the old you wants to go back to being the peacekeeper. That's normal. Integration isn't linear. But every time you choose yourself, every time you honor your boundaries, every time you trust your perception over someone's manipulation, you're reinforcing the new pattern. You're teaching yourself that you're worth protecting, and that lesson changes everything. The key is consistency. Every time you're tempted to abandon your boundaries to keep someone else comfortable, pause. Ask yourself, what am I actually preserving here? Am I protecting a genuine relationship, or am I enabling dysfunction? Am I being compassionate, or am I being a doormat? These are hard questions, but they're necessary. The old version of you would have immediately sacrificed your needs. The integrated version of you takes a breath and chooses consciously. You'll also notice that integration requires you to grieve. You have to grieve the relationships that can't survive your awakening. You have to grieve the version of yourself that you can never go back to being. You have to grieve the illusions you held about people and situations. This grief is sacred. It's not a sign that you made the wrong choice. It's a sign that you loved deeply and are now choosing differently. Let yourself feel it, honor it, and then keep moving forward. Because on the other side of that grief is a freedom you've never experienced before. Jung believed that the individuated person, the integrated empath, represents humanity's next evolutionary step. Most people live fragmented lives, showing different versions of themselves to different people, never fully integrating their light and shadow. But the empath who completes this journey becomes whole. And wholeness is magnetic, authentic, and powerful. So if you're in the middle of this transformation, if you're experiencing that snap, that awakening, that moment where you finally see clearly, know this. You're not breaking down. You're breaking through. You're not becoming cold. You're becoming conscious. You're not losing your empathy. You're learning to direct it wisely. The strongest version of the empath isn't the one who endures everything. It's the one who chooses consciously. The one who can walk away from toxicity with grace. The one who can love people without losing themselves. You're not too sensitive. You're sensitive in a world that doesn't know how to handle depth. But that world doesn't define you anymore. Do you feel this shift happening in your own life? Are you experiencing this awakening right now? Drop a comment below and share where you are in your journey. And if this video resonated with you, If you're ready to fully step into this transformation, hit that like button. Subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of transformation and becoming the most powerful version of yourself. In The Alchemist's Path, perception training for empaths, you'll turn overwhelm into wisdom with practical drills, Jung-inspired boundaries, and step-by-step perception training. This guide includes 3 exclusive chapter videos to deepen each lesson. Written by Surreal Mind, 236 pages, beautifully designed 8.5 by 11 downloadable ebook, in stock now. Start your training today. Feel deeply while thinking clearly. Get The Alchemist's Path at thesurrealmind.com. Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension.